Let's look at the if node. So I'll open up as usual. Now you can either go to flow and select if here, or you can just type if in that first screen, that first pane. So the if node is conditional for us. So it just means that we can choose a path. And so we can use the previous nodes that I've got here that is just setting some data. So for one example, we can just drag and drop string in here and say, let's use the variable JSON.string. So JSON here just refers to the previous node only. If we wanted to jump back and use an earlier node, I remove that and drag and drop that one in. You can see that it uses not only the full name of that node, but then also .item.json. So the only thing we're doing, if we want to refer to a node that is one or more away earlier in the hierarchy, we have to explicitly say which node we're talking about and use this full part there that I've highlighted. If we only need to reference the previous node, then we can get rid of all of that right up until the full stop there and just say JSON.string. So this means this one in particular and only this one. So it doesn't ever mean this one here. You can add, and let me show you by adding in both. If we add this one in, JSON.string, we add this one in, we've got the full path name. So we'll just use the node that it's before there. Let's use that one. And then we have quite a lot of options here, and we also have options based on the data type. Now in this one, we see we also have a date and time. We don't get this option in the set node, the edit fields node, but here we do. So we've got string, we've got number, we've got date and time, we've got Boolean, we've got array, and we've got object. And you can see that the list that pops up on the right-hand side does change depending on the object type. So for an object, we've only got 4 options: exists, does not exist, is empty, is not empty. But for an array, we've got quite a few more options. We've got half of them are around the length of the array, and then a few others. Boolean, we've got about 8 of them. It's pretty basic. It's kind of true, false, empty, not empty. Date, we've got about the same, maybe 9 or 10 there. And we can look at filtering like before or after, whether it exists or not. Again, all of them have whether they exist or do not exist. Number, we've got the standard ones, empty, not empty, equal to, and then we've got greater than, less than, or greater than, less than, equal to. And string, we have probably the most out of all of them, other than array. Yep, so string, we've got the most. Again, standard ones of existing or not, empty or not, if it's equal to another particular string or not, whether it contains part of a string. So in this example, if we say contains, then we could say that at the moment we've got, this is the value we've got, a test2. So if we had ES in here, this will be true because it does contain that ES. But if we have ESG, then it's false. It doesn't contain it. And the nice thing is the output will show you which branch it's going to take, whether it's the true branch or the false branch. And it will include all of the data that is being passed through, which is what you want as you work through the workflow. So that's the contains. We've got does not contain, so it's the reverse. And then you can also have starts with or ends with. And then the last two here are matching a regex string condition. And that is a whole complicated area that I'm not going to go into right now. We'll have a separate video on that, I think. So that's all of the different comparison options we've got depending on the data type. And it is important if we change, like knowing that this is a string here, if we change this to number, the nice thing is the user interface already knows that this isn't a string, sorry, this isn't a number. So we can't compare against that data type because the data type here is a string. If we change this to the one that is a number, it's going to say, okay, that's no problem because it is a number format. So it does give you that feedback in the UI to say you can't choose this option. And so we'll just go back to contains for now. And then you can add more conditions. So you can have it not just based on one condition for the if statement, you can have multiple. So you could say if it starts with TE and ends with T2, then it would pass. You can also change it to be an or. So it's one or the other. Only one of them has to be true. If it's an and, then both of them have to be true for that to equal true. And you can have as many of those as you want, make it as complex as you would like. Generally for if nodes and if statements, you want to keep them as simplistic as you can. If it gets into lots of different options, then you might want to look at a switch. But yeah, just coming back to the if. So that lets us add lots of condition types. You can also convert types when required, so you can just turn that on or off. And then for options, the only thing we've got is ignoring case for a string. And I will usually turn that on for a contains, because I'm usually, if I'm looking for a particular string within a string, generally I'm not going to be bothered about the case of it. So they're not going to be case sensitive is the term. So this is just making it case insensitive. So it just doesn't care. Wouldn't matter if the string here was all in capitals or not, if it's trying to find it, if it's just the ES, or we could type ES here and ignore the case and it's true. If we turn it off so the case is important, now it's going to say it's false because it doesn't have these capital ES, it has lowercase es. So generally for a contains, I won't care about the case, so I'll want to turn that on. And so that gives us two output options or pathways. So we have the true and we have the false. And it's good to name it. So you can rename the nodes here. So what are we saying? If string is contains ES, rename it to that. We can rename it there, or you can right click on it and rename it. So it gives us the true false. If I execute the workflow, it's going to go to true because I turned on the ignore case here. So even though this is in capitals, it ignores that. So it's true. And so now I can add another connector here, and I can add another if I want to have another if statement, and that will have its own true and false pathways to go down. And then the false one, same kind of thing. We might have another if, or we might actually have some other node where it does something. So you can have these in fairly complex kind of conditional pathways if that's what your workflow is needing. That's pretty much it for an if node. There's not really much else to it. So another node that doesn't get used as often as an if or a switch is the filter. So back again under flow and filter at the top there, or you just type filter. And as it says, we'll just jump back to that. As it says under the description, this removes items matching a condition. So if we go into it, we look at how it looks. It looks very similar to an if node in that we can add multiple conditions. It's got the same convert types we required. It's got the same option around ignoring case. And it looks the same here. We've got the value 1, value 2 on either side. And we'll just jump back into if. You can see that it looks very, very similar. So the difference is, if we put them side by side here, the if node has the true path or true branch, and it has the false branch. So regardless of which one it chooses, because it will always choose one or the other, it will continue on with your workflow. Filter, on the other hand, only has one output path here, and that is the items that are kept. So this is more useful when you're filtering a collection of items. So maybe an array of objects, an array of whatever. It could be an array of customers, a list of customers, things like that. So you're filtering, and you might want to only include or keep specific customers or specific records. So you would put that condition in here and say something like, if the string is equal to test3, then we want to keep it. And so we'll just execute that. So that will include all of the data and it will pass that down. If we don't, then, and let's change that to test4, then they're going to be discarded. So those records that don't match this are going to be discarded there. So we could actually, let's just insert a split node in between the two. We can test this out. So we'll split this object here. I'll just test that as well so you can see what it looks like. So we're splitting this now into two separate items. So it now has two items. So this is an array of objects that we're now returning. We'll jump to the filter node. So here now, we don't have all of the data from previously, but we've got this object. So we'll just say object here, and we'll say, let's say contains, because it's a string, contains the number 2. So you can see in the list here, that this one doesn't contain the number 2, but this one does. So if we jump out and execute the workflow, it's going to go through, and you can see here it is saying two. I can't do it. Here it is saying 2 items because we're getting it split into 2 separate. There's 1 and there's 2. And then we jump to the filter, and for the first item, it is discarding it because that doesn't have the number 2. And for the second item, it's keeping it. And so that is passing that on down the line. So it'll carry on. So you can see that it works a little bit differently to an if node, but it can be useful more for those kind of situations where you're wanting to limit to the data that you're passing through the rest of the workflow.